All right, let's get right into it. Today we're diving into the story of a true revolutionary, a fighter whose name really should be on the tip of everyone's tongue when we talk about pride. This is the incredible story of Sylvia Rivera.
So let me ask you something. When you think of pride, like the history of it all, who do you actually picture? What faces pop into your head? Seriously, think about it. Because your answer to that question, that's pretty much at the heart of what we're talking about today.
You see, we're talking about someone who was there from the very start. I mean, right in the thick of it, but whose story was almost completely erased, pushed aside, silenced, just about written out of the history she literally helped create.
So let's get to it. Who was Sylvia Rivera? Well, to put it simply, she was an absolute pillar of the entire liberation movement, a true pioneer.
Okay, so she was a Venezuelan, Puerto Rican trans activist. She was a drag queen, and you gotta remember, back then those terms and identities often overlapped. She was a community organizer fighting for the most vulnerable people out there. And, crucially, she was a veteran of the Stonewall Uprising. You know, probably the single most important event in modern queer history. The woman was a force, and she fought for every single part of who she was.
And, to really get why she's so important, we have to do a little myth-busting, and we're going to start with the big one. Stonewall.
So, for way too long, the story you'd hear about Stonewall kind of left trans people out of the picture, especially trans women of color. The myth was they were on the sidelines if they were there at all. But the reality is so different. They weren't just there, they were at the very heart of the resistance. And Sylvia Rivera, she was right there, in the middle of it, fighting back.
Just try to put yourself in that moment for a second. We're talking 1969. This isn't some distant, ancient history, right? This was a time when just being queer could get you arrested. The Stonewall Uprising wasn't just a random riot. It was a rebellion, a boiling point reached after years of police raids, harassment, and just constant oppression. And Sylvia, she was right there on the front lines of it all. But here's the thing, and it's a really tough part of the story. Her biggest battle wasn't just against the police or an oppressive system. In this really cruel, ironic twist, she ended up having to fight for her place inside the very movement she helped kickstart.
Yeah, there's this kind of fairy tale version of history where after Stonewall, everyone in the community just linked arms and marched off into the sunset, totally united. The reality, it was so much messier. Can you believe it? Sylvia was actually booed off stages. She was shut out by the more mainstream gay and lesbian groups who were desperately trying to look respectable to the outside world.
So you're probably wondering, why? Why on earth would they push her out? Well, her crime, if you can call it that, was that she refused to be quiet. She wouldn't stop fighting for the people the mainstream movement was trying to sweep under the rug. The unhoused queer kids, the trans folks, the people of color, anyone who didn't fit their clean, tidy, respectable image.
So what did she do? When the movement turned its back, she didn't just give up. She took action. She and her incredible friend Marsha P. Johnson founded STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. Just think about that. This was one of the first organizations ever created specifically to house and support homeless trans and gender nonconforming youth. She literally built a home for the kids who had been thrown out by everyone else.
And all of this fight, this action, it all points to the very core of who she was. It reveals her unwavering, uncompromising vision for what pride and liberation were really supposed to be about.
She completely saw through this idea that activism is just showing up for a parade once a year. For Sylvia, pride wasn't just a party. It was a 24/7 year-round fight for the absolute basics. We're talking a safe place to sleep at night, being able to see a doctor, just the fundamental right to exist with some dignity.
And this wasn't just some abstract theory for her. It came straight from her own life. As a Latina trans woman who knew what it was like to be homeless, to be poor, she knew you couldn't just pull these struggles apart. Decades before intersectionality became a buzzword, Sylvia was living it. She got it. You can't fight for gay rights over here and then ignore racial justice or economic justice over there. It's all connected.
And this really gets to the heart of it, with maybe her most powerful quote ever. It's so simple, but it hits so hard. Liberation that excludes is not liberation at all. I mean, wow. If your movement for freedom leaves anyone behind, it's not real freedom. It's just rearranging who gets to be on top.
So her entire life is basically this challenge to all of us, right? It forces us to stop, look around, and ask that really uncomfortable but totally essential question. Who's getting left behind? Who isn't in this room with us? As we think we're making all this progress, who are we forgetting?
And that brings us right up to today.
Because let's be real, Sylvia's fight is nowhere near over. Her legacy isn't some dusty thing you look at in a museum. It's a living, breathing call to action.
And we have to be crystal clear about this. The very same people Sylvia spent her life fighting for are still the most vulnerable among us. Trans people, and especially trans women of color, are still facing absolutely staggering rates of violence and discrimination. They're still fighting for basic rights. The work is so far from done. So what can we do? How do we actually honor her? Well, it's about more than just saying her name. It's about picking up the torch. It means supporting the trans-led and Latinx-led organizations that are out there doing the really hard work on the ground. It means educating ourselves and the people around us about the real history of this movement, all the messy, complicated parts. And it means using whatever voice or platform you have to make sure that people who are still being ignored are finally seen and heard.
And that's really the question I want to leave you with today. It's the challenge that Sylvia Rivera's entire life puts right in front of us. Are we just trying to build a slightly bigger, more exclusive club? Or are we actually trying to build a movement that's big enough and strong enough and brave enough to hold everybody? The answer to that? Well, that's up to every single one of us.